Alright everyone, it's time to talk about Uncle Bernie again, or really great-grandpa Bernie. He was praising Fidel Castro. This is optically a bad idea. Let me tell you how funny this is. Here's the problem. What he said was essentially the Fidel Castro regime, while authoritarian, had and certainly had some problems with it. He's being honest about that at least. Did some good things and they kind of worked. Like universal healthcare was achieved in Cuba. It's just that the healthcare that you get is whatever the government decides that you should get. That can change. They do have shortages. They have problems with rationing. And for many types of care, it's subpar. That being said, for basic care and certain types of niche surgery, yeah, Cuba's among the best. Technically speaking, Sanders 100% correct on that, at least if that's what you give artificial importance to. There are some problems with this, though. Here you've got a campaign that's fundamentally trying to convince people Bernie Sanders isn't that far left. No, he's not even really a socialist. Like, I hear from his fans all the time, he's not even really a socialist. How dare you far-right conspiracy theorist, calling him a commie or a commie lover. He's just a social democrat. He believes in capitalism and shit. Then why the fuck is he praising Fidel Castro? The whole rest of the Dem field attacks him. The legacy media tells you it's probably not a great idea. I can think of one important voting bloc in the United States that the Dems are not going to win without. And that is the Floridian Cuban voters. Many hundreds of thousands of people, expats, formerly under the Castro regime, their families, their friends, their associates, various groups of people. This is a really powerful voting bloc in one of the most close races. Florida has been the closest race 9 times out of 10 for how many fucking elections? We're not just talking the general. We're talking the elections for their Senate races, the elections for their House races in some cases. We're talking the off elections. Everything is close in Florida, probably because of ballot rigging and other various problems that go on. You've got an army of dead people voting for Democrats, and then you've got an army of voter suppression, like squads for the Republicans, and I guess they have a fight every 2 years. That's just sort of the stereotype anyway, and anyone who remembers the infamous 2000 election, of course, knows that things are screwy in Florida. You do not win the election without Florida, I don't think, especially if you're the Democrats. Bernie Sanders could pick off the entire Rust Belt and still lose if he doesn't grab Florida anyway, I think. So, pissing off this very important voting bloc in this state that goes almost 50-50, it's not a wise idea. And here's the problem. The reality is that what Bernie Sanders said fundamentally is not that far out there. But the perception of a person who is trying to convince people he's not a communist, whose campaign is trying to convince people he's not a fanatic. Look, every other time Bernie Sanders makes a tweet, what is he saying? Keep in mind the political optics, the perception, as Scott Adams would put it. I'm not a radical. It's not radical to say that we should have universal everything. It's not radical to give people free 3 scoops of ice cream a year. It's not radical to provide a universal pre-K. I'm not a radical. That's what Bernie Sanders needs to convince people of, because people think he's goddamn nuts. His echo chamber of Twitter and Tumblr fans think that he's perfectly normal, and they say, well, we could be more like Sweden. We could be more like Finland. We could be more like the developed world. Interestingly, all of these countries that they list, most of them are European. Anyway, we could be more like them. Bernie Sanders isn't a fanatic, they say. He's just a social democrat. He's sort of like he wants to be like Denmark or something, with a 50-60% tax rate. But then he's sitting there and he's praising Fidel Castro. It doesn't matter how many asides he makes to excuse his own support for the Castro regime. All of those expat Cuban voters there, all they see is a crazy old communist who can't get over the 1970s. That's basically what they see. It's basically what I see too. I see someone who is strategically out of touch and doesn't know what he's fucking doing. Sanders has been in an echo chamber among his fans and in the state of Vermont, and I warned people of this. Sanders has never won an election that didn't involve a far-left fan base being the voting bloc that he had to wine and dine. Sanders does not know how to appeal to independent voters. Saying, I want to give you free shit, and by the way, we're going to accomplish it with this tax and that regulation and this tax and this fee and this everything under the sun. That could work if you weren't also praising an authoritarian communist. There's literally no reason for Bernie Sanders to defend him. When asked about Castro, here's what you should say. I don't support the Castro regime. Castro's a dictator. He was crazy. and leave it at that. You don't have to explain, oh, but there were things that worked under Castro. Oh, no, there were things that were wonderful. By the way, I'm not a far leftist. I'm just a social democrat. You gotta be nuts. Are you fucking delusional? During an election, you're about to go into South Carolina voting, by the way, Mr. Sanders, in which you're in a tight race with Biden. He could actually come back and become the front runner by crushing you there. And then you sit there and praise Fidel Castro. If Bernie Sanders isn't nominated, at this point it'll be because he's his own goddamn worst enemy. He's getting flack from the whole field, and it's not just because he's the front runner. Initially, he was only the front runner because Biden collapsed anyway. Everyone else was chomping at the bit waiting for their turn, and it could have happened. Bernie Sanders manages to formulate a little bit of an extra voting bloc, and at the end of the day, he decided that instead of being sane, and instead of saying, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I've already out far lefted everyone, at least the people left in the field. I'm the front runner. All I have to do at this point is basically do what I'm already doing. And I can't, his campaign staffers have been, please, Mr. Sanders, please don't praise Castro. Please don't praise Maoism. Please don't undo all of the work we've been doing for several months trying to convince people you are not a goddamn fanatic. Here's the problem. The Democratic Party's Overton window shifted far left. In 2016, Sanders was barely on the fringes of it. People were like, well, he's not even a Democrat. He's not a liberal. He's a socialist. He's a fanatic. And they sort of kind of accepted him. They dragged their umbrella over just a little bit to cover him, but just barely. He took the umbrella and yanked it over further. He and his fans over the last few years, because they've been appealing to people who feel alienated by a Democratic core unable to stop Trump because they're goddamn weak. And so you get the AOC crowd, astroturfed by the Young Turks and similar groups. By the way, it looks like Cenk might get creamed in his election in California, of all places. I hope that happens because it'd be funny to see all the clanking that goes on in chat that night. Anyway, the party has gone further and further left. And the reason that they did this is because they realized that the younger voters were tired of the same old Democratic Party. And so instead of trying to be like reformist in the party of JFK sense and offering people, here's we're going to be optimistic and we can do it. We're Americans, pull together. We're going to try to reform the system and help people. Instead of that, they just said, no, corporate people who are rich, evil. Donald Trump, evil. Orange man, bad. They created an environment in which the furthest aspects of the fringe left that weren't even under the umbrella as recently as 2018 could grab that umbrella and yank it even further. So now Bernie Sanders, not only is he covered by the Democratic Party's umbrella, he's in the middle of it. He's the one fucking holding it. Well, that really, really sucks because, see, there's another group on the other side that's now getting all wet. And Trump is more than willing to extend an umbrella to them. Independent voters, including the center left. The center left is now considered Nazis by some of Sanders' fans. I've seen them fucking say so. Well, the liberals get a bullet too. These people you're just a sellout. You're barely better. You might as well vote Republican. I see these people practically begging the centrist voters to vote for Trump on a daily basis. I see it on every Sanders status. I see it on every status by Warren as well, which is why Sanders might win if she drops out and endorses him. I see it all the time. Oh, well, fuck you if you haven't made up your mind. If you're even considering voting for Trump, you're an evildoer, you're a fascist Nazi lover, and you want hate and evil to win. I see this. I'm not even being figurative here. I'm being quite literal. I see statuses like that on Twitter. Now, this is the echo chamber. Twitter's far left. There are a lot more leftists on Twitter than there are people of other persuasions. The conservatives sort of hold YouTube and oddly enough at this point a lot of Facebook. And then you've got Reddit and Twitter sort of on the other side. And what's happened is that these people have convinced themselves that this sort of thing is palatable in a general election, but it's not. You're talking about he's getting hammered in the Dem primaries after yanking the Overton window over so that he's literally considered a moderate within the Dem party. And he's literally trying to cast himself as a moderate. He's basically hijacked the Dem party, and you can tell that these people realize that this has happened. They're not happy about it. They know that they're going to go into the general, and if he's their nominee, they will fucking lose. They know this. He can't even stop himself from praising Fidel Castro. How the hell is he going to go up against Donald Trump? All of those alienated centrist and independent voters in the country are going to huddle together under Trump's umbrella and re-elect him by a massive margin. It's going to look like Reagan's re-election in an electoral sense. Yeah, Donald Trump will almost certainly be Look, if I was pretty sure before that Bernie Sanders would be a shitty nominee, This just cements my belief further. You can't possibly make an argument that this will work in a general election. There's no way to frame the debate in such a quick period of time that would possibly be considered anything other than at least eyebrow-raisingly leftist and out of touch. If not outright commie-loving, commie-pandering, which is exactly what it is. He just can't help himself. When asked about Castro, he can't just say, well, he was an authoritarian, so I oppose it. He just can't help himself. He's got to throw in that little aside because deep inside, he loves Fidel Castro. Deep inside, he wants that for the United States, basically. Deep inside, he's a far leftist. Yes, he is a commie lover. Yes, he is a socialist. Yes, he is a fan of Engels and Marx. This is Bernie Sanders, the real person. He's been a hack and a snake oil charlatan, grifting off the population, gaining taxpayer funding for his lifestyle his whole life. He just doesn't like private industry because he's a goddamn failure, and the only thing he's ever been good at is convincing very far left individuals that he will lead some sort of revolution, and then that people will recycle more and plant more trees and eat more quinoa and kale. This is Bernie Sanders, and that works if you're running for mayor of Burlington. It works if you want to be senator from the state of Vermont. You have to convince a few tens of thousands of people who are far left Democrats anyway, hey, by the way, I'm further left than the regular Democrats, so you should extra vote for me. It works, but it doesn't work if you're in Iowa. It doesn't work in Florida, praising Fidel Castro. You think it's going to work in the state of Virginia? You think it's going to work in the Rust Belt, where the unions are basically being told at this point by Sanders, who pretended to be their best friend for the last half century, oh, fuck off. I'm taking your health care away. I'm giving you one-size-fits-all government health care. Fuck you. Fuck your union. Fuck negotiating. Yeah, that's a really great campaign, dude. All during a surging economy, by the way. Let's change absolutely everything about the economy that's working by and large for the average American while praising Castro. Wonderful optics there, Bernie. Wonderful goddamn optics. It's going to be so fucking funny seeing him lose. That's about all. Peace out.